joining us. This is Comic Books This Week with Dr. Stanford Carpenter and yourself. And myself, rather. Ooh, it'd be weird if it was yourself. Bad pronoun usage, sorry. And we're going to review comic books that came out this week. Thank you for joining us. We'll be starting up, well, we can start up now, as a matter of fact, near as I can tell, because I've already started recording and I have everything going. This will be on YouTube very shortly, so thank you for listening. And if you miss any part, feel free to tune into the It's Complicated YouTube. Please join the house above my head, the green house, to join our It's Complicated Club to have an idea about what's going on. Okay, I think I've dealt with all of the housekeeping things that I'm normally supposed to say. I think, Stanford, right?
Yeah, we're pretty much set to go.
I love it. Amazing. All right, so we are going to talk about books that came out October 6th, 2021. And where would we like to start, Stanford? Because I know you got a lot of Marvel books this week. I noticed that.
Yeah, why don't we trudge through the Marvel books first?
It will be a trudge, will it not? All right. Where would you like to begin?
Well, let's start with Dark Ages.
All right. Dark Ages. So, there's no electricity in the Marvel Universe because reasons, and the reasons don't really matter, ultimately. And yay, we've now got a post-apocalyptic wonderland because there's fewer people using electricity and we're healing the planet, which is a bad message because that means we expect the only way to survive is for a lot of people to die and for white people to be in charge. Okay. You had some thoughts, Stanford?
Well, I finished it.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I thought it was interesting to just read it because it's the newest crossover, although that's not saying a lot of great things.
They hope you believe that, yes.
Yeah, the premise is kind of interesting, but I think the good thing about this crossover is it's not crossing over in a lot of places.
I would have to stop and ask you. What's in?
What?
You said the new crossover. That something about this concept is. What's interesting about it? What do you find interesting about it?
I actually find narratives around the breakdown of society to be really interesting, and I find it. But I often find that when I do actually get a chance to read them, either I suspend disbelief and it's a great read, or I look at it and I'm like you got this wrong. I can't believe that this is how things would play out. There's a little bit about this that I thought was interesting. The idea of binding all these different societies by telepaths.
Mm-hmm.
This idea of a group of heroes going around saying, hey, there's another way.
Mm-hmm.
I like that, but then once we started getting into it, I was kind of like, okay, I'm not sure. I didn't quite understand the rules, right? So I felt like everything is kind of like magic. Why can't we? Why don't we have electricity? Magic. Okay, we don't have electricity, but what about magnets? Okay, magic. You know what I mean? It's just there's a way in which it's a. I just think it's a. It sounds cooler than it is, and I thought that they would have like a better explanation for why everything is so dark, other than we've just we've magically gotten rid of electricity. I like that it's a contained miniseries though, because I think that allows it to have a it allows it to work better. It allows it to not stretch itself out so much where like you feel like you're reading installments that don't really have to do with it, but they just had to put the label on the book, right?
Yeah.
So from that perspective, I think that's pretty interesting, but I think that I have to give them a C- on the world building, and that is the problem for me.
I can totally respect that. For me, when I think of narratives of the breakdown of society, I just call that the news. But what I do think is interesting here is that this is the work of Tom Taylor, who's had a lot of real success in little niche corner world building sort of stories, Deceased, and so on and so forth. And at the same time, for both DC and Marvel, he's doing something where essentially it's not so technologically based. It's more magic based.
Right.
In this, there's no electricity. In that one, it's a fantasy version of the Justice League. Okay, sure, whatever. It's interesting that those are happening at the same time to me for some reasons that are both amusing and sad, but whatever. For me, when I looked at this, you're right. The core rationale that billions and billions of years ago, a destructive creature was trapped in the guts of the Earth, which apparently the Celestials didn't notice when they swung by and seeded the Earth with all these superpowers. That also coincidentally never came up when we were talking to Galactus or talking to the Living Tribunal, or hey guys, make sure you don't go too deep in that planet, might get a little wacky, things like that. It never came up. Sure, okay, if we're gonna play that way, I guess. But for me, I was more concerned that despite the fact that Wakanda was this center, this new capital of the world, that the face of the protectors was almost always white. That the
Right.
places where things were going right were being guided by white hands. And that felt a little bit disingenuous to me on a lot of levels. So I had some concerns there. Not super
Well,
angry concerns, but I won't deny there are concerns. But more than that, what you said about the world building, I believe that Tom Taylor, because he's so used to remixing things, basically remixing whole universes, he just figures I'll lay down the existing track and just rap over it. It'll be fine. Who'll know?
Right.
And I'm like, no, I'm gonna need you to actually, build out some of this. And it's like, okay, this is a Spider-Man with this version of a kid. How is this different than, Spider-Man or whatever else? And, let's get some actual
Well, what's
detail.
interesting, like when you bring up Wakanda, right? Like I thought that was a real missed opportunity
Yes,
because Wakanda does have a technology that has nothing to do with electricity, and that's vibranium.
true.
And so I was looking at that, and I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe Wakanda is like the one place that's not affected by this because they do stuff with sound. And I thought, and I'm like, oh, that's something to play with, and I just feel like we just went right past it.
Agreed.
And that's one of the things that's at least for me that's important about world building is once you build the world, it should play a role in writing the stories. Like there are just some stories that aren't going to happen in certain built worlds,
Exactly.
and you have to go with it. And I think that when a writer doesn't quite think all of that through, it just kind of weighs the story down, and that's how I felt. Like I was like, oh, this is interesting, and I'm like, but it's like that doesn't make sense. But I think we should go to the next one.
I agree. I'll call this one at best a meh because I'm not gonna remember a lot of it.
I give it a meh minus.
All right.
What about Defenders?
Okay. Speaking of magic, Defenders. I think it frightened and alarmed me at several states because I'm reading along and there's all this and they're running and stuff is happening and blah blah. I'm like, but I don't care. Who are these people? I mean, I recognize half the Defenders, but I don't expect anything to happen to them because I don't expect anything permanent to happen to, I don't know, Betty Ross or Doctor Strange or whatever. I mean, Betty Ross has been Harpy for going on 3 years now, and it hasn't made her life any more interesting for the reader. It has for her, of course, but for the reader, she's still just a gamma traipse along, and that doesn't connect so strongly for me. Moreover, and this is I'll stop with this. Moreover, this is what really I texted it. There's a panel late in this book, and it's upsetting. It's an upsetting visual that did not make me comfortable at all, and I kind of get what they're going for there, but I don't like it, and it made me uncomfortable. And I'm not gonna spoil it for anybody who's gonna read the book, but it feels like they're trying so hard to make this fifth universe because apparently the universe of the current Marvel universe is the sixth universe, the sixth Big Bang, Big Crunch cycle. And they're trying to make this fifth one super wacky, and in the process, not doing it for any specific story-related reason. Just like, oh, let's do this crazy thing. That'll be fun. And that's cool
Right.
and all, but it has major limitations in terms of storytelling.
And this is and here's the thing. I feel like the problem in the last book was world building. The problem in this one is universe building.
Yes.
But I do think Defenders does a slightly better job. I think it does a slightly better job, but it's got another problem, which is characters that I really don't care about.
Yep. Like that
you
mask
haven't
guy?
made me.
Who's
Yeah,
he?
I don't know who he is. If he died and someone else put the mask on, I wouldn't mourn the guy previously. I feel like, and I feel like that's one of the problems. And I I don't. I hate to say this. I can't get past the idea of making a female character into a monster called Harpy.
It's a
I just.
little easy, yeah.
I think that it's just it's not just a little easy, but it just plays on some on just some real misogynistic symbolism.
Agreed.
You know, but I think the irony though is I think that the character is visually really interesting. I like everything about the character, but the name distracts. I thought it was kind of interesting this idea that like they'd have a world where it's where everything's about magic and there is no science, and the person that would be the most scared is Doctor Strange, right? You know, I thought that was interesting. So I think that I feel like in this, I'm having interesting things bubble up against a background of a lot of things that they haven't really got me to care about that much, right?
Uh-huh.
The character that's like a sentient star system.
Cloud, I think. That
Cloud,
one? Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I hate to say it. I don't. You haven't really sold me on that character.
Yeah.
And I think that's a real problem, right?
It
I
is.
mean, but there's things that stand out. I love is it Taia,
Yeah.
the mother of Galactus, right?
Galactus Mom has got it going on.
She's a fun character. She's a really fun
She's
character.
bombastic. I
You
love
know,
that.
I feel like she and Harpy are the funnest characters. I think the Masked Rider is an interesting character, but you gotta be more than interesting to make it work. I'm not. I have mixed feelings about Silver Surfer in this, just because Silver Surfer. It's like, but Silver Surfer and Doctor Strange, and also with Cloud, you have characters whose abilities are so undefined
Yes.
that I never know whether to be worried. I don't understand why. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, I need to know what your limits are for me to feel like I should be concerned about any obstacle in your way.
That's fair. And I will say that, with the only thing we got from Cloud, because, for example, if you ask me, what's Cloud's outfit look like? I don't know. What's Cloud's hair look like? I don't know. Does she wear a mask? Does this character wear a mask or not? No. I don't know. Maybe. What we do know, though, is that they use they, them pronouns, which came up.
Right.
And I appreciated it from an allyship standpoint, but from a characterization standpoint, I think I should have gotten that in an earlier issue because I don't remember getting
Right.
it before. And I think
Right.
that's a deficit. That, you're coming up this late and is like, and we're throwing out pronouns, but I still don't know what your costume looks like. I don't know what your powers are. I don't know what your shtick is. I don't know what your origin is. I don't know why you're here. I don't get it.
Right.
And that's not saying that we shouldn't have characters like that, because we absolutely should, and we absolutely have enormously valuable characters who use all types of pronouns. The issue is, with this specific application, give me some more of this character so I can get invested.
Right. Exactly. I mean, I. I'd give this either a Meh plus or an honorable mention minus. It's just kind of in there. If you love Doctor Strange, if you have a specific love for some of these characters, yeah, come back for it. But if you're following it more just for the story, I'm not sure if this is one I could recommend.
I'm following everything for the story, so this would be a solid meh for me. This is Comic Books This
Right.
Week with Dr. Stanford Carpenter and myself, Hannibal Tabu. We're covering the books that came out October 6th, 2021. What is next on our hit parade, Stanford?
Eternal Celestia.
Eternal Celestia. Okay. Let's see what's going on with Eternal Celestia.
Well, I feel like this is the Eternals book that you should be doing when you have a movie coming out. You actually have Ajak and Makari as women, just as they will be in the movie.
Yes.
But I thought that this was actually a really interesting idea of a story, right? This idea of like two very different believers amongst the Eternals. I gotta say, I kind of enjoyed this.
You
I
did.
enjoyed this a lot more than the last Eternal series, where it was like, okay, here are the Eternals, and I felt like the last Eternal series stretched out a couple of beats a couple of beats that were somewhat interesting, in a way that made them uninteresting over time.
Yeah.
Whereas this is dead on. I really enjoyed this book.
Okay, well, that's a bit more forgiving of a view than I had of it. When I looked at this book, it's based on the concept of faith. The central element
Right.
here is faith, that one character has this enormous amount of faith in the Celestials as their space gods, and the other one is kind of irreverent and kind of, maybe a reformist or whatever. What I don't get is the doctrine, the message, the lesson of these space gods. I don't get what the faith is about. So, for example, if you ask me about, say, I don't know, Zoroastrianism, I could probably, rattle off a few random facts around, or Jainists or Baha'i. I could tell you some things about what their faiths say, what their faiths are about. I don't know what these people believe. I know that they believe, but I don't know what. And more importantly, I don't really know how. I don't understand how the practice of it works. So if you're starting with
Right.
faith and you don't flesh out those things, that's going to be a limitation. Then you, in my opinion, shoehorn in the Avengers of 1 million BC, which I think every application of them is shoehorned in because they make zero sense, um, as a precursor or even a justification for a conflict with the Avengers of the modern day. I think that's a little, you're like, and then somehow Palpatine returned. No, 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 no. That's you're shortcutting me to stories to make me believe that this was all one grand tapestry when I know for a fact it wasn't, because there were no Avengers of 1 million, not even 5 or 6 years ago. So
Right.
I'm like, nah, I'm not feeling it. I really appreciate, as you say, the idea of the movie accurate Eternals as we hopefully would see them and how they should be, but I'm not connected with why, what, and how they're specifically believing in, and why that should affect their characters this way.
Well, okay. So honestly, I agree with you about the Avengers million BC, 1 million BC, feeling shoehorned in. I felt that too, but I still felt like the story around it was really interesting. I don't need to know all the elements of the faith in the first issue. I feel like they gave me enough in the first issue. I feel like I better be learning the faith in this, learning more about it in the second issue, or in a second issue. But I saw this. I mean, I saw faith as being very much used to tell us about these characters, and and one thing I did like is that they did hint at it with the opening thing where they described what each of the characters, like Ajax, keeper of the old ways, and Makari, keeper of the new ways. Okay, so you set up that there is something there,
A
right?
schism.
And then right, and then you have the other four keepers, right? That I'm assuming we're going to get to. I hear you, and I respect your feeling about wanting to know more about the faith, but I want to know about the faith, but I don't need it necessarily to get through this issue.
Okay, I can dig that. For me, I would say that this is a bit of a meh book for me because the whole Celestials thing and what I think is going to be overcome by the movie, which will be in terms of just the sheer charisma of the actors that they cast, is that I'm not so much connecting with the characters. So if you ask me tomorrow, hey, man, what about that visual design on Ajax? I would struggle to remember it. I would have a
Right,
hard time
I'm with
remembering.
you.
But if you ask me, oh, what about that visual design on Angelina Jolie as Thena? I can tell you all about that because it's a visual that sticks in my mind because it's clear. It's very
Right.
clear.
I feel you on that. I mean, I would give this a high honorable mention. I mean, it does have some shortcomings, but like I said, I did enjoy the book.
Indeed. All right, cool, cool. What do we got next up on comic books this week?
Next up, New Mutants.
New Mutants. Yeah, New Mutants.
So this one didn't do it for you, huh?
Here's the thing. if you show me the New Mutants fighting the Shadow King after I've already seen the New Mutants fighting the Shadow King with almost, honestly, the exact same arguments and methodologies that were used the last time the New Mutants fought the Shadow King, then I'm going to believe that either the New Mutants or Shadow King are stupid because they're not seeing that they're doing the same thing over and over again. That's the definition of insanity.
Right.
So for me, the idea that we roll in on, of all people, Karma, of all people, Sean McCoy, walking up in this like, this is what we're going to do when we fighting the Shadow King, and I'm going to just sit around and talk most of the issue. Nah, fam, you've been traumatized. You need to bring a satellite strike or something down on this because there is a challenge, partially with psionic beings, but partially with the whole idea of retributive or restorative justice on Krakoa, that they don't know what to do with people who are intentional bad actors. Mr. Sinister, the Shadow King, Sabretooth, they threw him in a hole, but we all know that's not going to go well because he's just waiting to come out and he's going to be angrier than ever. So it's like, it's like what they say about landfills. You're just putting this problem off for another day. And the problem's not going to get easier to fix on the next day when you come at it.
Well, I completely agree with you. I think that we're too far in the game to not have more sorted out about resurrection and the implications thereof.
Yep.
This whole thing about we don't resurrect clones.
Racist.
It's just like all these different things about but they can petition to get their clone resurrected. Well, why even have a thing that's saying not to resurrect clones? Because let's face it, when you get killed, there's a long line of people that you got to get through anyway. They could just put you to the bottom of the line, and we just won't see you for a long ass time, right?
Like Destiny.
Exactly. I felt like this issue was a placeholder. I didn't feel like it took me anywhere.
Yep.
I think as with some of the other ones, the visuals are really good. I think there are a few little character bits in there, but I'm like you. It didn't quite add up to me as something that made me feel like we have moved a story forward. And there's also something that was actually a little difficult for me not Rebellion of the Host. It's strategies and tactics. I'm not sure what that was about.
You mean one of the little interstitials there? Yeah.
Yeah.
I read that and I was like, what? Who are we talking? What's going on here? What?
Right. And there's a lot of good about this book, but it just didn't come together.
Yeah.
And I think that you pinned the tail on the donkey when you brought up that essentially this book is everything that we've already done in this series.
Yeah. Yeah. I will also make note that it's interesting that we were talking about the Eternals on how there's supposed to be a keeper of the old and keeper of the new. Farouk here, the Shadow King, is absolutely a keeper of the old. The old ways are all he can cling to because they're all he knows, because he doesn't have a body. He can't really evolve in a lot of the same ways that all of us do. And he is a very conservative voice, advocating fear and horror and terror, whereas the new, literal, taking the name seriously, new mutants are pushing for there's a new way, or as they said in Dark Ages, it doesn't have to be like this. And they're trying to push this forth. That schism is much more clear. I much more clearly understand the positions of both of them and can respect where they're coming from here. I just think execution-wise, this is an argument that we kind of didn't. I think it's a little late to still be having this argument between these specific people who, frankly, none of them are really qualified for it. None of them have the perspective to really come forth with it.
Well, one of the things that bothers me also about all of this is, that decision to say that Sabretooth needs to be doesn't get, that everybody gets a chance at redemption but Sabretooth, right? Mm-hmm. And when I saw that, I thought to myself, and props to you for bringing this up, which is, if Sabretooth doesn't get redemption, the Shadow King definitely doesn't get redemption.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, Sabretooth, for all the people he's killed, he's also tried to fly right, Yeah. He's actually, even though not that vested in the character, he has made some efforts. Shadow King has never tried to fly
Never.
right. Shadow King, all he does is mind rape people.
Yeah.
And I don't use that, and I don't use the R word lightly. But for that character, that is what this character does.
True.
He you know, and I feel like having him around. I think there's a lot of other characters that are like that too. If you were going to bring back every mutant, good and bad, I mean, I just find it hard to believe that they would say, okay, everybody gets a chance at redemption, but they wouldn't keep tabs on anyone.
To be fair, they're pretty sloppy at nation building. And actually, that brings up an interesting point that I thought of, that the hole, shoving people like Sabretooth in the hole, is the same as the exclusion for the Eternals. It's like, no, not you. You get excluded from resurrection. You get excluded from the benefits of the society. Just you specifically. And what does that mean?
Right.
Oblivion. It's not a way to fix anything. It's a way to put a pause on you until eventually you pop out of the system, because you will. It's like Arkham Asylum. Sooner or later, you're going to get out. And then we're going to dance the whole dance all over again. And frankly, that's a fair criticism people make about superhero comics in general, the kind of cyclical nature of it. And I agree. I'm not a big fan of that.
Right. I mean, yeah, I think that, yeah. And when it's funny, because when I say at least keep tabs on, I would think that they would. Like, how, like, in any type you have a society like this, you know, part of keeping a society working, especially if it's a democratic society, is you got to be able to keep tabs on everybody so that you can hear the feelings, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just this way in which just, you know, it's like, okay, we're bringing back these predators, and we're just gonna stick them in the middle of the playground and let them chill.
Good luck.
like I don't understand how he would be anywhere near kids.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah,
But,
they definitely need a
that's
Krakoan
just me.
sex offender registry. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
That'd be a
Yeah,
low
I
meh
mean-
for me on that one.
Yeah, I got to give it a meh as well. Although, you know, previously I've said lots of good things about New Mutants. This was just, like I said, it truly was a meh issue, right? If you got the issue before this and you went to the next issue, you wouldn't have missed anything.
You know what would help? You know what really is missing? On the issues where we don't like it, they all have one thing in common. I've noticed that. You know what's missing? Bobby DaCosta. Because Bobby DaCosta is entertaining. I tell you what.
Oh, yeah. Well, but, you know, I think Warpath has been entertaining as well.
He ain't in here either.
He's in one panel.
He ain't in here either.
Well, okay, on to the next one. It's a Marvel book, but I don't feel like it's a Marvel book. Star
Ooh.
Trek.
That's not a Marvel. You mean Star Trek Year 5?
Yeah. Oh,
That's an
shoot.
IDW
Why did I
book. I'm
put
like,
that
what are you
under
talking
Marvel?
about?
That's an IDW book.
I'm like, what?
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
You're an anthropologist. Anyway.
And I'm a Star Trek fan, and I missed the attribution on that one. You know
But
what it
to be
was?
fair, you're
It's a
drunk.
misprint. When I wrote my list, I accidentally put it in the wrong category.
That's fine.
But speaking of which, let's leave Marvel. Let's go to Independence, and let's do Star Trek.
Okay, Star Trek Year 5, the final issue of the final season. Yes.
Yes. You know what? It was a true epilogue story.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that they did a really good job of satisfying the requirements of the assignment,
Yes.
which is to take that Year 5 series and get it to flow into Star Trek: The Motion Picture. And I think
Yes.
they did a really good job with it. I thought that they created some interesting vignettes that brought out things about each of the characters. And they also helped with some of their recons, like the whole thing with Scotty and Uhura being in a relationship. Like, you know, before, you know, during the series, it was always it never seemed like that. Always seemed like a weird combination, right? They never were really around each other. Like, it was really more like Uhura being around Spock.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, and then the kiss with Kirk. You know, so I was always like Scotty, but this one they actually had that little scene that hinted at the fact that at their burgeoning relationship. I thought that was kind of nice.
So you're saying there is reference to that in other places?
Pardon?
There's
No,
reference.
I'm saying that there's not reference to that in other places. And by inserting this reference, I thought it was interesting that they went out of their way to insert that reference. You know, I'm not saying that was that. I'm not. I'm still not saying that I love the whole Scotty Uhura relationship. I always felt like that was an out of left field relationship. But I recognize that I have to recognize the work that I felt like this issue was doing, and I thought that it did it really well. Like I'm just trying to imagine as a writer being told, okay, now you got to get this 24 issue series to slide on into slide on into the Star Trek the Motion Pictures. That's, I mean, I always felt that the end of Star Trek and then the beginning of Star Trek the Motion Pictures was always a weird pairing anyway. So yeah, I kind of enjoyed it, but Star Trek is also my comfort food.
I understand.
What did you think?
I liked a lot. I really, what I most appreciated, what really, really nailed it for me was the Kirk Tholian thing. I thought that was the strongest element of this book. And as a through line, brought the whole book together. Because this was always planned as a 25 issue series. This was not like, oh, we're canceled all of a sudden. This was always a plan. They had a writer's room, they had an outline, they knew exactly what they were doing. And each one of them got a chance to contribute to this last issue. So I really appreciated that, and the speech that the Tholian Bright Eyes delivers is so Star Trek. It's so good, and I was like, yes, I'm feeling it. Yes, I'm with you. This is what I want. Then the idea, all due respect, of Uhura, who is fine, and Scotty. My brain just had a real problem reconciling that. Like, of all the people to roll up on from the crew, Scotty, I just didn't see it. I don't get it. I don't get it. And
I'm
it
with you.
vexes me.
I've never gotten that either.
It completely vexes. So at first I was like, oh, are you saying this actually was referred to somewhere else and I'm just not noticing it? But if you're saying this has never been a thing anywhere else and this is happening here, I'm like, that's weird.
In one of the later sequel movies, they connect.
Oh, okay. Well,
So, and that's
I
what
mean, if you're
meant.
trying to
Like,
get there, then I guess this is fine.
and the point is that's what I meant. It's something that happens in one of the later movies. I think it was like 5 or 6 or something like that. And I always felt like that came very much out of left field. But I like that they used this to seed it there. That's what I was talking about.
Oh, okay.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that I stand that relationship.
Got it.
I just respect that they went and put that. They put more work into it than anybody else did. Let's put it that way.
Then in that case, I have a lot more respect for it if it was, connecting the dots. Because I get this is Dancing in the Raindrops, and I totally get that.
I'm with you though. I also like that they used the Tholians.
That was great.
Because I feel like there's a lot that I love about the Klingons and the Vulcans, but I feel like they're overused.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I think it's nice to see some of these, especially the Tholians, because in the original series, they talk about the Tholians as like these badasses,
and they were.
They were, but they don't really come back to them. And so I thought that was cool. I mean, it's kind of like when they, with the whole thing with Shran. I'm forgetting the species name.
The Andorians.
With the Andorians, right? Like I've really loved I loved in Enterprise when they actually, let us see a little bit of the of what the Thandorians were all about,
Andorians,
right?
yeah.
Or the Andorians were all about. And I love that we have a revisiting of Andorians in Discovery. I think that's because they always talk about them as this really important race, but we really don't see a lot about them. True. And most of my knowledge of them is actually from the novels, not from the movies. Like in the novels, they've got like 4 genders. They've got there's a lot going on with them.
Yeah.
And they're also one of the founding species for the Federation, which I find to be really interesting as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean the other race that I wish we'd learn more about is the Bolians, because they come up all the time too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, big ups for doing something with the Tholians.
Yeah, and it was very impressive. So that I really enjoyed. And honestly, what I was surprised. I was like, I want to go to much more of this. The little Russian interlude for Chekhov where there is inequity being applied across Earth itself. Even in an age, even in a post scarcity economy, there's still people who are not benefiting from that, benefiting from the replicator boom and all that. And I was like, now that's interesting. I want to go to there. Maybe that explains why Picard's got a mansion and everybody freaking else doesn't. So yeah, I was very interested. I was like, oh, what is this? Oh, please, let's talk some more about this. What is this got going on? Because I want to see
what I
what's
think
going
is-
on there.
Yeah. And what's also interesting about it is, part of me felt like I wanted this to be, I almost wanted to see them expand this interlude. Like all these references to like, okay, Kirk's an admiral and now they're working in the admiral's office. That's actually a story I want to see. I want to see what these admirals actually do.
You know what I would
you
actually
know?
like to see? I would like to see like
What?
a show like The Office, but with Star Trek admirals.
Right.
That would be hilarious because Lower Decks is giving me every part of my life right now, and I would love to see that. That would be amazing.
Well, I'd like to see it. I'd like to see it not as a comedy though, because I think they kind of in this a lot of times set the admirals up as being the problem characters, not the solution characters, right?
True.
So I think it'd be interesting to see how an admiral's office operates. So you have an admiral with an office with commanders and captains underneath them. Okay. And they have their own billet and they go around and do stuff. Okay. I'd like to see that.
I could get on board because it'd be a bigger scale thing. So you'd be able to dig into larger diplomatic, more even espionage style stories. So yeah, I can see that too. But I'd also like it as a comedy. I would be happy either way.
All right.
But yeah, this is a
I
buy
see
for
where
me.
you're coming
I
from.
absolutely bought this because I really enjoyed this series as a whole. And despite my little quibbles with certain moments, like the Bones story, that didn't tell me nothing about Bones I already know. Bones is cranky.
Yeah.
I get it. That's fine. But as a whole, that Tholian speech alone, I was like, "You're bringing me home, baby. Do it."
Yep.
You take me. Just it's all good. My body's ready.
So let's go to another space book, Redshift.
Okay, Redshift. Yeah, Redshift. I'm not as sure. Let me flip down to my notes on it. Redshift. Guy. All right. What was happening
I'm still trying to figure out what it's about.
well,
To be
okay.
honest.
So you might have to scroll back a few issues. The gag about Redshift is that humanity lives on Mars mostly, and Earth is completely screwed, and humanity is running out of time on Mars, so they're trying to figure something out. So every year or so, they launch a mission into space to try to figure something out, and none of them ever come back. And this is the latest mission with two people who hate each other.
I mean, I got that part, but
Yeah, so the gag is they're going out and they haven't even gotten out of the solar system yet. They're still trying to figure that out and figure out what they're specifically supposed to do and how to get to some place that will work for humanity, that will help. Their goal is to save humanity, basically, through science. However, the space part, the part with the two people who hate each other, was way more interesting than the corruption that was happening back on the ground. And I felt
Yeah.
that the corruption part back on the ground honestly undercuts the importance of the mission because maybe those people deserve to die. But also, it took up space where I could be really getting more into these characters because the tension and the real revulsion between them, I think is super entertaining. Even though I think it's a thin line between love and hate sort of thing that's ultimately going to lead me somewhere I'm going to be like, womp womp. But until I get there, I'm enjoying the ride.
yeah. I mean, I actually felt like it was a really well put together book. I liked the visuals. It wasn't my favorite of the week. We'll get to my favorite shortly.
You darn right.
But you know, but but I kind of enjoyed the ride, even though I was a little clueless about some of the stuff that was going on. I think
Yeah.
I think they did a really good job with the pacing. I mean, and they actually captured the loneliness of being out on a science vessel with one other person. They managed to bring through the starkness of it all.
I agree. Yeah, I could totally do that. And for me, I would probably honorable mention this myself. because, like I said, I'm enjoying elements of it. I just feel like it's not putting enough meat on its bones for me. So,
Okay. Yeah, I give it I give it a high honorable mention. Um, you know, um, but let's go to the next one. The me you love in the dark.
oh my, oh my, yes, the me you love in the dark, indeed. What's happening in this book, Stanford? Oh my God!
I had no idea. I just looked at the title and I was like, well, gosh darn, let's check that out.
Let me dial this back. Let me dial this back. Okay, so because we're on what, issue 3 now? Yeah, 3. So 2 issues ago, this artist named Roe, commercially successful artist who does, kind of confectionery pop art, kind of, basically not what you'd call serious gritty, art, just kind of commercial art that's very popular but doesn't really satisfy any artistic urge. And she feels that, and she got bored, so she either rents or buys, I can't remember, this old house that the realtor honestly was having a hard time unloading because people think it's haunted and yada yada yada. And so does this and tries to use this to rekindle her artistic spirit, so she can do something a more personal set of work. And at the end of the first issue, she's sitting there minding her own business, talking to herself, and something talks back. And in the second issue, you kind of get to see what this something is, and it's weird. And it just gets deeper and deeper until where we are here in issue 3. So that's the basic framing of what is going on here. Oh, you're on the phone. Okay, there you go.
No. Yeah, I dropped out for just a second there.
I don't know how much that you
Yeah.
got, or if you need me to recap.
No. I got it. I mean, I felt like this took me to a place that I was very uncomfortable. you know,
Uh-huh.
it's clear that she and the monster have become close. They become closer. They become biblically close.
Yes, sir.
But the way they do it, like, it's just this is. I mean, I just felt like I really felt like I was taken to a place, and I was like, aren't you supposed to be scared of the monster? And the
Are
fact
you?
that she's not scared of the monster, I actually really enjoyed the story. I enjoyed all of the ways in which it made me. I enjoyed all the ways in which it made me feel a little put off, right?
Yeah.
And in that way, it did what good horror does.
Yes. And exactly that. So for me, the reason why I keep coming back to this book is because I can't stop thinking about it. Like, I'll walk away from it and I'll still be thinking about it. I'll be like, ooh, but what about, ooh, oh, but that was weird. Oh, and these thoughts won't leave me. That's good work. If you can stick with
Yes.
somebody's brain that hard, especially me, because I've got a gajillion things going on. But I keep coming back to this, and it keeps getting my attention. And
Yep.
the subtlety of what's happening here, the lack of explanations from this so-called monster, the lack of curiosity on this hand of Roe, the artist, is it shows a lot to me about the characters that you don't have to say. That she's looking for something. She's lonely. She's haunted. She's really challenged by this kind of soft life she's led, and she's looking for something a little out of the ordinary. And in doing so, by watching these old movies with the creature, or whatever, that she finds a kind of comfort and a kind of intimacy that she was unable to find out in the quote unquote normal world. That's weird, but it's also very relatable for a lot of people who feel disaffected and disconnected from what's going on, not just during the pandemic, but in life in general. And I
Right.
get that. So I was like, okay, that's deep. Of course, the thing that I keep thinking about more than anything is, what's the agenda? What's the plan? Where are we going? This all has to end in tears. The question is how. And
Right.
and that dread as we inexorably are pulled towards that awful, awful ending that has to happen is kind of delicious. This really, I normally am not a fan
It's
of
this
horror, but I
combination
get it.
of love and tenderness and dread, all wrapped up into a nice little confectionery fruit, right?
And
I
I've had
mean, it's
relationships like
just
that. Yeah.
yes. I mean, I really felt like I said, I felt like I was taken somewhere, and I'm glad for the trip.
Yeah, yes. This is a buy for me. I'm in on
It's
me the me love in the dark.
this is a buy for me as well. Um, I mean, yeah, it's definitely a buy. What about Last Flight Out?
Okay, Last Flight Out feels like an action movie. It feels like this is a treatment for like a movie that got translated. And don't get me wrong, the creators are Hollywood people, so I can totally see the DNA built into it. They're in. There's only one of the military characters I feel I'm connecting with. The other one feels like a cutout that doesn't really have anything going on that I really relate to. The strained relationship with the daughter is enormously well established. I get that. I get what's happening there, and I totally understand it. What I don't feel is, I mean, I get the importance of this scientist who's come up with a way for people to get off Earth and escape its inevitable doom or whatever. But I don't feel anything about him. I get why, but I don't get who he is, if you see what I'm saying. And
Right.
other than being an absentee father, I don't have any idea of what his life is like. And that's a lot to hang your hat on for a protagonist. The military lead has at least a little flavor to him, a little like this is what I'm doing, this is who I am, this is what I'm about. But there's not a lot of meat to go around on all these plates. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I felt like I just felt very much like this is one of the stories where I've been here before. It's Escape from New York. It's so many other
Yeah,
I have to go into the war zone and pull someone out. I
fair.
mean, now we're in issue number 2, and she's like, I don't want to go. But even that's kind of like we've seen that before too in
Yep.
movies. I feel like things are kind of moving. They feel like they're moving slowly in the comic.
Yeah.
And I think that I gotta say, this is also hurt by the fact that I've been exposed to Eve,
Yep.
right?
Oh
You
God. Yeah.
know, I mean, Eve was similar in terms of like a journey into darkness, but it was done so well.
Yeah.
So it's like when you've seen something done that well, it's really hard for something that's not done as well.
Yeah. That's
You
fair.
know, unfortunately, I have to, as much as I like I actually like the first issue of this. I'd have to give this a meh.
I will follow suit. On Comic Books This Week with Dr. Stanford Carpenter and myself, Hannibal Tabu, head comics reviewer at Bleeding Cool. That was a meh for Redshift from both parties, which, it is what it is. So, what do we got next?
Well, we're gonna save the best for last.
As we should.
So, yeah. So let's talk Last House on the Lake.
No. You skipped one. One that you wanted.
No, I didn't.
You said
No,
you
I
want.
didn't.
Oh, are we not doing that? Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't get the signal. Okay. We ain't got the visual signals I can get on a panel. Okay. All right, moving on. So let's do the last book then. I went ahead and read that
No,
book, man.
Last House on the Lake is it was it was an amazing book.
Yes.
But there's another book that got me got me a little more this week.
Wait, what? Oh, okay. Then okay. I'm excited. All right, let's talk about Nice House on the Lake first. Let's do that then, because this is my
Yeah.
favorite book of the week.
Yeah. And I'm going to say I love this book. I'm not. I mean, me saying that there's another one that got me a little more is kind of like you give one a score of 9.985, and this one's got 9.985.5 on
Wow.
the other one.
Okay.
So this isn't like this isn't me saying anything bad about Nice House on the Lake.
Which is great.
Yeah, Nice House on the Lake. Like the difficulty of doing a book like Nice House on the Lake is that it's very much much of the plot is an empty vessel, right?
Yes.
They're put in this strange situation, and you don't have an explanation. And really, 9 times out of 10, the explanation does not live up to the anticipation.
True. It's hard. Yeah.
And I think that's the reason why this book got edged out for me, because now we're getting into the explanation phase, right? And I'm reconciling the explanation with my anticipation. I love the storytelling. I think the art was beautiful. I like that now we're starting to get a sense of exactly why these people are there. So we are dealing with aliens now, right? Or
Maybe.
it seems to be aliens, right?
Maybe.
Well, we're dealing with some other form of life.
Outside context problem.
Exactly. and we're also dealing with a situation where this whole thing has been brewing for a lot longer than we thought.
Yeah, it has.
So I like that. I like this idea that oh, this situation was 13 years in the making. I love that, like, now we're dealing with with some sort of other type of being, and that they had encounters with him long before. I love that. You know. And the ending of this was I didn't expect the ending.
Did not see it coming.
Yeah, and it was kind of, but it's also a really interesting ending because it's like, oh, so maybe an ending where things aren't, where like we spent all this time telling us how hopeless this is. Now we're like, oh no, there's hope out there.
Well,
Oh, okay,
you need to see that it's dark to value the light. You need to
right,
appreciate that, and I get that. For me, the ending was a very big surprise, which I enjoyed quite a bit. What It's interesting you talk about expectation, because this issue went away from what my expectation of it was. My expectation was that this was a biodome, that this is all, and this isn't a spoiler because it may not be true, but that they've been put in here as an experiment by aliens for whatever reason, and that the Earth is just fine and nobody's hurt at all. That was my expectation. I'm starting to get the feeling I'm wrong. And that's delightful, because I love being wrong about these sorts of things, because I'm like, ooh, good, something new. The twist provided that to me, that there's answers yet to be recovered, and that there's a machinery here at play that they do not yet understand, despite all the information that they have already.
right,
Figuring that out, the unfolding of this mystery, I wouldn't say it's slow, it's perfectly paced. That each issue I get just enough, and I keep coming back for more. I get just enough, and I keep coming back for more. And I'm really starting to get engaged with the characters. This one in particular, the scientist, as they called her. Watching her, and when I do my review for Bleeding Cool, I'm completely going to figure out a way to work some Coldplay lyrics into that. But anyway, the scientist here, I really got her character as another black nerd who was fascinated by things in the sky very young. I really connected with a lot of things that was done here with the script with James Tinney and the Fourth. And this kind of dour, overcast art style really works to convey the oh no, and as you said, that dread, that pulling you forward of that we get in the Me You Love in the Dark. So I'm enjoying the heck out of this book, and we're what, 4 issues in now? This is 5 issues in. We're in
this is
5
five.
issues now, and I'm still like, oh yeah, oh yeah. Normally I'm like, yeah, it was great, but stuff happened. No, this is
Right.
still 5 issues in. It is nailing it as hard, and I'm loving it as much as I did in the first issue, if not more.
What I love about it is that is that all these people that are trapped in the lake house, is that they're not stupid.
They're not. They're
And
shell shocked, but they're not stupid.
I like how they're showing how they're walking through figuring out what's going on, right? Yeah, you have the shell shockness. You have the characters that are somewhat broken by this. But even then, it's like there's a very natural, rational progression here that allows me to suspend disbelief in ways that I wouldn't be able to otherwise.
I can dig that.
I mean, I like I like that somebody finally said, because it's been in the back of my mind, this is Wisconsin. There should be no mountains in the background.
Yes, I'm really glad that came up. Yes,
Like
because a
like,
lot of my
okay.
family's from Wisconsin, so I was like, what?
Yeah. So yeah. So I like that they're. I like that they're. It shows me that they're very cognizant of the all the cues that they're dropping. I mean, I still don't know what's going on outside. Unlike you, so you assumed that it was a biodome and everything was okay outside.
That was my assumption.
I've been thinking. I've actually been wondering if it's a biodome and everything's not okay outside.
I think that
And
might
then
be right.
I've been wondering if like this whole idea that they keep having stuff sent to them and stuff like that. I wonder if we're not just waiting. I was wondering if we're waiting for the moment where like all of a sudden the deliveries just stop, right? But
Yeah.
I gotta say, I really like this. I really like this book. It's definitely a high buy for me.
Absolutely, for me
It's
too. It's absolutely a buy, and for me, normally when I have a lot of questions about a book, that's a bad sign. But these are questions of interest. These are me questions of engagement. So I absolutely recommend this book to anybody who talks to me. I love it.
right. So
So
so yeah. So
what got your
on
attention more than that though?
Righteous Thirst for Vengeance.
I gotta hear this. I gotta see what did it for you with this.
What did it for me is was okay. The first page. I'm like, okay, no one's saying anything. The fact that they went so long without how many, so many pages without a single word being uttered, right? Like, like one, two, three, four. It's like six. I think it's like 6 or 7 pages before a single word is uttered.
Yep.
I love the way they took us through and actually developed the character without him saying anything.
Uh huh.
I thought I thought that this was like a master class in storytelling. And even the moments where something is said, it's very sparse. Like this is an artist this is a writer who trusts the artist,
True.
right? I like this whole thing, like you spend the first half of the book with him just getting on the bus, and
Yeah.
you're trying to figure out why, and he helps these old people, and you're like, okay, just that whole thing in this journey, right? And then you get the hint that there's something going on with sex trafficking, right? You're just like, okay. Okay, and that the book is called Thirst for Vengeance. It's like, oh, okay, so he's going after someone, but then he gets off the bus and he's at the stop, and he runs into someone. He like all these little things,
I thought he had to
but they're
transfer.
done with right. But the way they're doing it is he is not. They are not having them say very much, if anything at all. Like the majority of the pages have no words,
Yes.
no words whatsoever, and yet I have followed this journey. I've taken him, and when they get to the point where you're supposed to, I love that they actually spend a couple of pages just trying to figure out what to do about a dying bird, you know, but they do it in a way that actually tells us something about the characters, right?
Yep.
And then when he gets to the house, and then he starts putting together that he missed something that he should have noticed on the way up,
Yeah.
and even the way they did it, we also, you know, I've always said that good mystery writing, all the clues are there. All the clues were there, and so you're like, oh. And I actually started to put it together a little bit before he put it together.
Oh, yeah, me
but
too.
that's a testament. That's also a testament to the writing. Like this was diligent. I feel like this book is a masterclass of comic book storytelling.
Yeah, I will say, you felt much more strongly about this than I did. I will say I agree with you. There's an enormous confidence in this creative team that they don't have any real questions about which one is doing what. There was a strong belief in their abilities, and I get that. The characterization is enormously strong on this person, despite the fact I don't believe we even got a name, but we definitely got an understanding of who this person is, what they're kind of going through, and that it is a mystery. For me, I had a feeling when I was in high school reading Ulysses by James Joyce. I was like, this is all going to go somewhere. Ulysses did not, but this feels like it will. This feels like
Right.
this is what it's actually supposed to do. But in doing so, in doing it in such a matter-of-fact way, in such a almost lackadaisically paced way, I feel I would appreciate it more if this were an original graphic novel or if this were a movie. At the periodical pace, at the periodical cost, I'm gonna need you to give me a little more heat. I'm gonna need you to give me a little more what's happening here, so I can engage with the story more. I will say there was the jump scare that happened there. I put it together a little bit before him, but it did not stop it from shocking me. And I was still
Right.
like looking very closely at those images, like, oh my God, is that oh my God, what is that? And so on and so forth. So there's a lot to enjoy and appreciate about this, but I have a strong feeling that when I sit down with this as a collection, I'm gonna sit back and go, wow. But on a monthly pace, I feel it's not really built to communicate that way. It's not giving me disparate and fair-sized chunks of content in that regard.
I mean, that's a fair criticism. But for me, I'm looking at this issue as it is presented to me now, right? I'm not basing it on I don't know what's going to happen next month.
Yeah.
All I know is that they did something here that we don't see very often,
True.
which is storytelling without a lot of words.
Yeah. Yeah, I can dig that.
And that really got me. You know, and it's interesting because Nice House on the Lake is also a tour de force of storytelling. Like what Nice House on the Lake is doing that's interesting is everything that X-Men's trying to do with having all those other forms.
Yeah.
Like emails and stuff like that, like sandwiched in there to give you a sense of what's going on, right? They're trying to do that, but Nice House on the Lake does it perfectly.
Absolutely. And I totally dig that.
But this did something else, and so I mean, I do think to some degree, picking righteous thirst for vengeance over Nice House on the Lake is kind of like trying to figure out which of your children you love the most, right? But at a certain point, that's what I had to do. So,
Well,
and I think. And again, we're talking about two high buys. We're talking two high buys separated by separated not even by like a better ranking so much as just what favored my mood a little bit more.
Okay, I can respect that. For me, and we got to close down very shortly. For me, I thought this was a gorgeous book, a brave book, but I thought as a single issue, it's the definition of meh because I'm going to have to reread it when the next issue comes to be able to catch up with what was going on because I'm going to forget.
Okay.
But yeah, that's just me. Thank you for joining us for Comic Books This Week. This is Dr. Stanford Carpenter and myself. Please find this on our It's Complicated YouTube page where I will get it up hopefully by the end of the weekend. This week I got it up by Wednesday of the next week, which, sorry. We appreciate you, and we hope you are safe and wearing your masks and getting vaccinated, and we'll see you soon.
Have a good one, everyone.
All right, bye.